and when the canyon whispered, he answered. A soldier returned not to glory, but to silence. A dog once lost to war, now found in fear. Their bond torn by storm time and trauma was never broken, only buried. But healing doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes in quiet steps, soft music, and a child's touch. Would you believe that even the most wounded souls can find their way back together? Comment below. Do you believe second chances can save us? Even when we no longer recognize ourselves. The sun cast a deep amber glow over the red rock cliffs of Sedona, Arizona, as the wind stirred dust across the desert floor. It was early October, and the summer heat had finally begun to loosen its grip. A cool breeze snuck through the sycamore trees, rustling their golden leaves and whispering across the rocky trails. The sky, painted in strokes of violet and peach, watched quietly as Liam Carter returned home after more than a decade away. Liam, 38, had the look of a man who had spent more time among ruins than among people. His body was lean, but not frail, built from years of carrying gear across rugged terrain. His hair, dark brown with strands of gray, was cropped short, and a narrow scar traced his jaw like a forgotten battle line. His eyes were a piercing steel blue, always scanning, observant, but distant. He walked with a quiet heaviness, a man made of endurance shaped by war and grief. The bus dropped him at the edge of town, and from there he walked a faded canvas duffel slung across one shoulder. Inside was little, just a few clothes, a tin of instant coffee, and a photo. The photo was worn from dust and sweat edges, curled corners bent. It showed a younger Liam kneeling beside a German shepherd, sharp-eyed ears alert, a long scar cutting through his brow fur. Shadow. His partner, his guardian, presumed lost in Afghanistan during a flash flood 2 years ago. Sedona hadn't changed much. The same rust-colored cliffs, the same quiet streets, and Sam's auto repair still sat at the far end of Oak Creek Bend, its sign faded but stubbornly intact. Sam Tucker, now in his 70s, was a wiry man with a thick head of silver hair and a voice like gravel and whiskey. He stepped out from under the hood of an old truck as Liam approached, wiping his hands on a rag that hadn't seen soap in years. "Well, look who's finally shown up," Sam said, squinting. "Didn't think the ghosts around here wore boots." Liam gave a tired smirk. "I figured you might still need someone who speaks carburetor." Sam chuckled and pulled him into a brief, rough hug. "As long as you don't talk my ear off, you'll do just fine." The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. Liam worked in the shop by day, tuning engines, replacing brake lines, and listening to country radio that Sam refused to turn down. At night, he stayed in the back room, a cot, a coffee pot, and silence. No TV. No phone. Just silence and the ghosts that never really left. It was one of those nights just after sunset when Liam first heard the music. He had walked to the edge of the canyon not far from Bell Rock, drawn by habit more than thought. That's when he heard it, a violin, slow and mournful, floating on the wind like a memory. The sound seemed to come from the trees ahead, bending with the breeze. He followed it. There, beneath a crooked juniper tree, a woman sat on a plaid blanket. She was in her 30s, slender, with long, honey-brown hair twisted into a braid. Her cardigan hung loose around her frame, and her skirt brushed softly against the rocks. In her hands, a worn violin gleamed in the fading light. She played not for applause, but for something far deeper, like she was trying to summon someone from the past. Liam paused behind a rock, listening. The woman finished the piece with a trembling note, then lowered her violin and sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. She reached for a thermos beside her and poured tea into a tin cup. That's when she noticed him. "You know," she said without looking directly at him, "most people who sneak up on me at night at least pretend they're bird-watching." Caught off guard, Liam stepped forward, unsure whether to retreat or speak. "I wasn't sneaking. Just heard the music." Her eyes met his, then soft gray, cautious, but not afraid. "You from around here?" "Used to be," he said. "Left. Came back." She nodded like that answer made sense. "Emma," she said, setting her cup down and extending a hand. "Liam," he replied, taking it briefly. Her grip was gentle, but grounded. "I'm not used to an audience," she said. "I'm not used to music," she chuckled quietly. "Then I guess we're both out of place." There was silence again, but it wasn't heavy, just shared. "I play here most evenings," Emma added. "The canyon's the only one who doesn't mind if I mess up." Liam looked out over the red cliffs. "You didn't mess up." She didn't answer, just offered a small smile and sipped her tea. Liam nodded once, then turned. "Good night." "Good night, Liam," she called after him, and somehow the wind felt less lonely walking back. That night in the quiet of his cot, Liam stared at the ceiling. He thought of Shadow's ears perking up at the sound of music. He remembered the way the dog had once tilted his head when Liam sang poorly to pass the time. And for the first time in a long while, Liam let himself hope. The morning sun cast long fingers of light through the dusty windows of Sam's garage, illuminating the specks that danced like tiny ghosts in the air. Liam wiped sweat from his brow as he leaned over the hood of a '96 Bronco trying to wrestle a stubborn fan belt into place. The sharp scent of motor oil filled the air, grounding him in the familiar rhythm of turning bolts and grinding metal. But even as his hands worked, his thoughts wandered back to the canyon, back to the violin. Emma's music still lingered in his mind. There was something about the way she played, not flawless but raw, vulnerable, that haunted him in the best way. He hadn't returned to the juniper tree since that night, but every evening, as the sun dipped low, he found his feet moving unconsciously toward the edge of Bell Rock. Later that afternoon, while delivering an alternator to the Animal Rescue Center just outside of town, a favor for Sam Liam heard a sound that froze him in place, a long, wavering howl. Not the hungry whimper of a shelter dog, but something deeper. Almost mournful. The rescue center was run by a woman named Carla Mendez, mid-40s, tall and broad-shouldered with sun-wrinkled skin and arms strong from years of lifting crates and walking stubborn dogs. Her dark hair was always tied back in a messy bun, and she wore an expression that suggested she'd seen every kind of cruelty and still found the will to fight it. "Need help with that?" she called from across the lot, noticing Liam standing motionless, box in hand. He nodded, snapping back to himself. "Yeah, this thing weighs more than it looks." Inside the rescue center smelled of antiseptic and cedar shavings. Rows of kennels lined the walls, each filled with barking pacing or quietly dozing animals. Carla led him to the back, to a section marked Quarantine. "That's where the new one is," she said, unlocking the heavy door. "Found him 3 days ago, wandering near Cathedral Rock. No tag, no chip, just scars and fear." The moment Liam stepped inside, his eyes locked on a form curled in the corner of the furthest cage, a large German shepherd with dull, matted fur and a haunting familiarity. The right ear was nicked, and a faint line cut through the brow. Liam's breath caught. Shadow. The dog didn't respond. No tail wag, no lift of the head. Just a slow flicker of the eyes. But it was him. Older, wearier changed, but it was him. "You know this dog?" Carla asked, voice cautious. "He was my partner," Liam said, barely a whisper. "Thought he died. Flash flood in Afghanistan. He got swept away. I looked, but we never found him." Carla's eyes softened, but she said nothing. She opened the cage slowly and handed Liam a pair of gloves. "He's skittish. Won't eat unless it's dead quiet. Won't let anyone touch him. Be careful." Liam crouched low, setting the gloves aside. "Shadow," he murmured. "It's me." The dog's ears twitched. One eye, clouded slightly by age or trauma, blinked slowly. Then he shrank further into the corner. "I'll give you some time," Carla said. stepping back and closing the door. Liam sat beside the cage for nearly an hour, saying nothing, just being there. At some point, the dog looked at him, really looked, and something flickered in those cloudy eyes. Not recognition, not yet. But maybe the memory of safety. That evening, Liam didn't go to the canyon. He stayed in the garage's back room, staring at the photo of Shadow in his wallet. He compared the angles of the face, the scar across the brow, the ears. It had to be him. But war changed more than men, it scarred souls. The next morning, he returned to the rescue center. Carla was already out walking a three-legged pit bull named Lucky. "You really think it's him?" she asked. "I know it is," Liam said. "He just doesn't know me anymore." "He might in time. We've had dogs forget their names, their families, even how to bark. But sometimes a sound or a smell, it can bring it all back." Liam nodded. "Can I take him home?" Carla hesitated. "He's not ready. But maybe we try something gradual." By the third visit, Liam was allowed to sit inside the kennel. He didn't touch Shadow, just talked. Told him stories from before the war, about the day they graduated training, about the time Shadow stole an officer's sandwich, about the nights in the desert when only the stars and a dog's breath kept him sane. On the fourth day, Emma showed up at the rescue center. She wore jeans and a loose sweater hair braided over one shoulder and carried a violin case. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "Sam told me." Liam looked surprised. "He told you about Shadow?" She nodded. "He also told me you haven't been sleeping." There was no accusation, only concern. Emma glanced toward the quarantine wing. "Mind if I try something?" Before he could answer, she was walking toward the back. She stood outside Shadow's kennel, opened the case, and drew the bow across the strings. A soft, steady melody filled the room, melancholic and slow, like an echo from a forgotten life. Shadow didn't move at first, then his ears perked. He raised his head. He didn't approach, but he didn't shrink away either. He listened. When the last note faded, Emma smiled. "He's in there. Just needs the right key." Liam exhaled. "You might have just played it." The mornings in Sedona carried a chill, now the kind that whispered of coming winter. The golden leaves along Oak Creek had begun to fall, blanketing the walking path outside Sam's garage in brittle reminders of time's passing. Liam awoke earlier than usual, the hum of sleep broken by the distant echo of a memory Shadow's old bark, sharp and commanding as it had once sounded in the mountains of Kandahar. But now it was just silence. At the rescue center, Carla met him with a nod. Her sleeves were rolled high on her forearms, revealing a long tattoo that wound from elbow to wrist, an inked tribute to a pit bull named Jasper, she later told him, who had saved her from a house fire years ago and didn't survive the smoke. That loss had made her tougher, perhaps colder to strangers, but fiercely devoted to animals, who, like Jasper, had once burned quietly. Shadow lay in the far corner of his kennel, curled like a question mark, eyes dull. He no longer flinched when Liam entered, though he still didn't approach. Emma hadn't returned since playing the violin. Liam wished she had. Her music had stirred something in Shadow that his voice alone could not. Today, Carla had an idea. "There's a therapy blanket in the back," she said, pointing toward the storage room. Weighted. Some dogs with trauma react to pressure, gives them a sense of boundary, like they're held without touch. Liam retrieved the blanket, a thick quilted square with faded paw prints stitched along the edges, and sat just inside the kennel. He didn't place it on Shadow right away. Instead, he laid it over his own lap and waited. For 30 minutes. Then 40. Finally, Shadow stirred. He stood slowly, like waking from a long, brittle sleep, and sniffed the edge of the blanket. His nose twitched. Then cautiously he lay beside Liam, not touching, but near enough that the warmth of his body bled through the floor. That night, Liam did not return to the garage. He stayed at Carla's request, helping with feedings and logging intake forms. The rescue had a new arrival, a gray tabby cat with a mangled ear and half a tail picked up behind the diner by a teenage waitress named Nessa. Nessa, barely 17, wore chipped black nail polish and had a silver lip ring that caught the light when she talked. She was the kind of girl who didn't trust easily, who walked like she expected the world to push her. But she held the cat with such tenderness that Carla said nothing when she showed up without an appointment. "I named him Spoons," Nessa said, "'cause he curls up like one." The cat hissed at everyone except Shadow. When they brought Spoons into the quarantine wing, the little gray creature padded straight toward Shadow's kennel and pressed his flank to the bars. Shadow blinked. Then slowly he shifted his weight so their sides aligned metal between them. Liam watched, stunned. "That's new," Carla grunted. "Sometimes the broken find each other faster than the rest of us." Emma reappeared 2 days later, violin in hand, and this time she played with her eyes closed. A slower song, more delicate. Shadow didn't move at first, but when she hit a trembling note at the halfway point, one that wavered like wind through canyon reeds, he rose and walked to the front of the kennel. His ears twitched. He stared directly at her. Liam saw something change in his dog's posture. Not fear, not confusion. Attention. Engagement. After the song ended, Emma lowered her instrument and looked at Liam. "He's trying to come back." Liam didn't answer. His throat was tight. Later, Emma sat beside him outside the center. She wore a denim jacket with frayed cuffs and boots dusted from the trail. "I lost my daughter in a car crash," she said suddenly. 3 years ago. She was 8. Her name was Lily. I used to play her to sleep every night. Same song." Liam didn't speak. He simply reached out and placed his hand gently on hers. Her fingers were cold. The next morning, Liam brought Shadow a leather collar. It was their old one, his military issue with a tag engraved in block letters, Shadow/19A Squad. He opened the kennel door, slowly knelt, and held it out. Shadow looked at it for a long time. Then to Liam's shock, he stepped forward. He didn't flinch when Liam fastened the collar. He didn't growl or back away. Instead, he sat. It was the first command he had obeyed in over 2 years. Liam's eyes welled. Carla watched from the corner and gave a small, tired smile. That evening, as the red cliffs caught fire beneath the setting sun, Liam took Shadow on his first walk outside the center. Only a few paces, but enough. Enough to feel the desert wind on their faces again, and for Liam to hear the steady breath of his old companion keeping pace beside him. The wind that morning carried the scent of juniper and cold stone brushing past Liam's collar as he led Shadow along the dusty trail that wound toward Bell Rock. The sky overhead was a crisp, unwavering blue, cloudless and watching. Sedona's red cliffs stood sentinel bathed in gold light, silent as memory. Shadow walked beside him now, not fully at ease, but present attentive. His ears twitched with every creak of wind through the pines, but he didn't cower. Progress came in inches. They reached the base of Bell Rock near noon. Liam crouched and touched the earth, the same sun-baked dirt he and Shadow had trained on a lifetime ago. Here in the weeks before deployment, they had run drills, silent tracking scent recovery obstacle climbs. It had been hot and grueling then, but Shadow had taken to the challenges like he was born for it. Seeing the same terrain now, Liam wondered what remained in the dog's mind, what lingered beneath trauma and time. Shadow paused near a broken tree limb and sniffed, then began pawing at the ground. Liam froze. That was something. That was a sign. He pulled a small canvas pouch from his jacket. Inside were the remains of an old training rope frayed at the edges, but still familiar. He tossed it a few feet ahead. Shadow's eyes tracked it, and after a pause, he walked toward it and pressed his nose to the fabric. His tail gave one tentative sway. Liam smiled. "That's my boy." From behind them, tires crunched over gravel. Liam turned to see Emma stepping from her hatchback violin case in one hand and a woven picnic basket in the other. She wore a flowing, moss-colored cardigan, and jeans her boots scuffed from the trail. Her hair pulled into a loose braid caught the light like dried wheat. "Thought you might want lunch," she said, smiling. "And maybe a little music." She spread a blanket over the sun-warmed rock, pulling out sandwiches. 2 enamel mugs and a thermos of peppermint tea. Shadow hovered nearby, sniffing curiously. "I brought one for him too," she added, producing a small bundle of cooked chicken wrapped in paper. Shadow approached slowly and accepted it from her hand. No growl, no flinch. "He trusts you," Liam said, watching. Emma shrugged softly. "Sometimes animals know what we don't say." She tuned her violin and began to play a melody slow and wistful, like wind moving across tall grass. Shadow lay down, eyes half closed, as if the music folded over him like a blanket. The moment felt suspended whole, but then it shattered. From the highway beyond the trees came the sudden wail of a siren, shrill, urgent, impossible to ignore. Shadow sprang up with a yelp and bolted into the brush, his body low to the ground, tail-tucked legs moving on instinct. Shadow Liam called, already running. Branches whipped against his arms as he sprinted through underbrush and rock, scanning left and right for any sign of movement. He finally spotted the German shepherd crouched beneath an overhang of red stone, panting, eyes wild. Liam approached slowly, heart pounding. "Easy, I'm here." He reached into his jacket again and pulled out the frayed rope. He didn't toss it this time. He set it gently on the ground between them. Shadow's eyes shifted. A breath passed. Then another. And then carefully Shadow inched forward and laid his paw across the rope. Later they returned to the picnic site, where Emma waited in silence. She said nothing, only handed Liam a mug of tea, and resumed playing softly, her bow gliding like breath over the strings. As the music faded into the wind, another figure emerged from the trail. He was tall, broad-shouldered, in his early 60s, with a silver beard and deep crow's feet that curved outward like sun rays. His boots were caked with mud, and his khaki jacket bore a patch that read, "Search and Rescue." Carla had sent him. "Hank Delaney," the man said, nodding toward Liam. "You must be the soldier trying to bring his dog back from the brink." Liam stood and shook his hand. "He's not just a dog." "No," Hank replied. "He's a soldier, too." They sat together on a log, while Emma played a quieter tune for herself in the background. Hank watched Shadow, who now rested with his head on his front paws. "I've worked with animals like him," Hank said. "Combat dogs, search dogs, hell, even house dogs who saw too much in a fire. They don't come back on love alone. You've got to give them a job, a mission. That's what keeps them sane. That's what makes sense to them." Liam looked down. "I don't know if he's ready." Hank tilted his head. "Then find something small. Doesn't have to be war, just purpose." The idea lingered long after Hank left. That night, Liam sat by the fire pit outside Sam's garage. Emma joined him wrapped in a heavy shawl. Shadow curled nearby on a patch of worn bedding, his body relaxed, tail twitching softly in a dream. "I was thinking," Liam said, "maybe I bring him to the kids at the orphanage. Just a visit. No noise, just being there." Emma smiled. They'd love that. And maybe he would too. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded drawing, a gift from one of the children. It was of Shadow wings drawn across his back, eyes bright with the words, "You are strong," written in uneven crayon letters. "He's already someone's hero," she whispered. Liam looked over at his companion, now breathing steadily in the firelight. "Then maybe it's time I let him remember how to be." A week passed before Liam felt ready to try. The idea had taken root in his mind, fed by Emma's quiet encouragement and Hank's practical wisdom. Shadow needed a mission, not one of danger or urgency, but of meaning. And if anything could awaken what still slept inside the dog's fractured spirit, it might be the laughter of children. The orphanage sat at the edge of town, tucked behind a grove of cottonwoods, its white clapboard siding weathered by time but lovingly maintained. It had once been a small church, and the steeple still stood, though the bell had long since fallen silent. The place was run by Sister Agnes, a woman in her late 60s with silver hair, always pulled into a tight bun, eyes that saw everything, and a voice soft as felt, but strong as gospel. She had once been a music teacher before taking her vows, her love for harmony now expressed in the way she organized the daily rhythms of children's lives. Liam had met her once years ago during a donation drive before his final deployment. When he called to ask about bringing Shadow by, her reply was immediate and warm. Animals speak to children in ways we cannot. Bring him. We'd be honored. That morning, Liam brushed Shadow's coat until it shone in the light and clipped on a new service harness. Nothing fancy, just canvas straps and a sewn patch that read, Companion. Shadow stood still during the process, his ears flicking slightly, but his body steady. His eyes no longer held the wild gleam of panic, but something quieter, watchful, open. Emma met them at the gate, violin case in hand. She wore a soft blue dress with sleeves rolled to her elbows, hair braided neatly. "You look nervous," she teased. "He's the one doing the hard part," Liam replied, patting Shadow's flank. Inside, the children were gathered in the old chapel room, which now served as a multi-purpose hall. The stained glass windows still filtered colored light onto the wooden floors, creating pools of blue and red that shimmered when the wind stirred. A dozen boys and girls sat on floor cushions coloring, reading, or simply waiting, their expressions a mix of curiosity and excitement. Sister Agnes greeted them with a gentle nod. "We've told them Shadow is very special, but also very brave." As they stepped in, the room fell quiet. Shadow hesitated at the doorway, paws rooted, nostrils flaring. Liam knelt beside him. "It's okay, just like training. You're not alone." After a pause, Shadow stepped forward. A boy named Tyler, no older than 6, approached first. He had sandy hair, a cowlick that defied every comb, and walked with a slight limp, one leg shorter than the other. He extended a crayon, drawing a picture of a large dog with a red heart above its head. "This is for you," Tyler said solemnly, "in case you forgot how to smile." Shadow sniffed the paper, then looked at Tyler. His tail thumped once, then again. Liam's heart clenched. Nearby, a girl named Miriam, small and curly-haired, took a seat beside Shadow and quietly began to sing off-key, sweet and without fear. Shadow remained still, the corners of his eyes softening. Emma began to play notes, soft and warm, filling the space with a sense of calm. As the music rose, other children came forward, sitting near Shadow, some leaning gently against him. He didn't flinch. He lay down, stretched out like a guardian. At rest, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of Emma's bow. Sister Agnes brought out cookies and tea, and for a while the room was all light and laughter. One girl, Miriam, whispered to Shadow as if telling him a secret. Another placed a daisy behind his ear. He didn't mind. A teenage boy, Miguel, who rarely spoke, stood near the window and sketched the scene in charcoal, glancing shyly at Emma now and then. Then came an unexpected moment. A tall, lanky boy named Noah, 12, quiet, always at the back, stood up and asked if he could try giving Shadow a command. Liam nodded. "Keep your voice calm, firm." Noah took a breath. "Shadow, sit." Shadow looked up. His ears twitched. He hesitated. Then slowly, deliberately, he sat. The children erupted in quiet cheers. Tyler hugged Miriam. Sister Agnes beamed. Emma, still playing, slid into a light-hearted trill, matching the new energy in the room. That night back at Sam's garage, Liam sat on the porch steps while Shadow rested at his feet, eyes half closed. The desert stars blinked into being above them, cold and eternal. Emma joined him, handing over a folded napkin. Inside was a drawing from Miriam Shadow with wings sitting on a cloud next to a smiling girl who bore an uncanny resemblance to Emma herself. "She said he was her angel," Emma murmured. but I think he's ours too." Liam didn't answer right away. He looked toward the canyon where shadows gathered under moonlight and remembered a time when all he wanted was to forget. Now all he wanted was for Shadow to keep remembering. The next day, Liam and Shadow returned to Bell Rock, not to train, not to relive, just to walk. The wind was stronger than usual, sending dust in swirls that danced along the trail like ghosts in motion. Liam paused at the same outcrop where they had sat a week ago. Shadow moved ahead and stopped near the edge tail, up gaze fixed. And then Liam heard it. A sound from above. Not music, not words, but a howl, long, low, familiar. He turned his eyes to the cliffs. Atop the tallest rock stood Shadow, poised like a sentinel. He let out a single clear bark, deep and echoing. For the first time, Liam didn't hear pain in that voice. He heard presence. The sun climbed slow and pale over Sedona that morning, its light casting soft gold against the red cliffs. A gentle breeze swept across the plateau, rustling mesquite leaves and whispering against the side of Sam's garage. Liam stood beside the old workbench, running a polishing cloth over the battered brass tag on Shadow's harness. It was a simple ritual one that quieted his thoughts. The word companion still gleamed faintly despite the scratches. Shadow, resting nearby, lifted his head slightly at the clink of metal eyes, alert but calm. A week had passed since their visit to the orphanage, and the memory lingered like a gentle ache. The children's laughter, Noah's quiet command, the drawing of wings. All of it had rooted deep in Liam's chest, and in Shadow's. Since then, the dog had begun sleeping more soundly, his ears less twitchy in the night. Once, Liam even found him sprawled on his back in the sun paws, curled upward, belly exposed. Vulnerable. Trusting. Carla had noticed too. She stopped by the garage that afternoon, climbing down from her battered blue pickup with a clipboard tucked under one arm. She wore her usual threadbare flannel shirt sleeves rolled high and a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed her weather-worn face. "Got a favor to ask," she said, without preamble. "Old fella out near Dry Creek lost a herd dog 2 nights ago. Lightning scared the poor thing off. Name's Duke Border Collie Smart, but panic's easy. If you're up for it, thought you and Shadow might give a hand." Liam glanced at Shadow. The dog was watching Carla, ears forward. "We'll try," Liam said. Dry Creek sat about 15 minutes west of town. A patchwork of open range and low hills dotted with cacti and scrub oak. The ranch belonged to Thomas Langley, a Vietnam veteran in his 70s, tall and wiry, with deep-set hazel eyes and a limp from an old shrapnel wound. He wore denim overalls and spoke with the slow, deliberate cadence of someone who'd long since stopped rushing life. "He's out there somewhere," Thomas said, handing Liam a torn piece of Duke's blanket. "Won't come to me anymore. Too skittish. But maybe your boy's got better luck." Shadow sniffed the cloth tail, twitching. Liam watched closely as the dog's body tensed, nostrils flaring, then turned toward the hills. Without needing instruction, Shadow began walking, not fast, not aimless, but with intent. They followed him for nearly 40 minutes through dry creek beds and over narrow ridges until at last Shadow stopped beneath a twisted juniper and let out a soft bark. Ahead, barely visible in the brush, crouched a black and white figure, thin, trembling, wide-eyed. "Easy," Liam whispered. Duke didn't run. He watched as Shadow stepped forward, tail low, body relaxed. The German Shepherd stopped just a few feet away and sat panting quietly. After a moment, Duke crept forward, nose down. Shadow didn't move. And then gently Duke licked Shadow's muzzle. Thomas wept when they returned, clutching Duke to his chest. "Thought I'd buried too many friends already," he said. That night, Emma came by with her violin and a peach cobbler she'd baked that afternoon. Her face was flushed from the heat of the oven hair pulled into a loose bun wisps framing her cheeks. She laughed when Sam grumbled about the sugar, but didn't refuse a second helping. Later they sat on the back steps as Emma played. The melody was slow, like a lullaby. Shadow rested with his head on Liam's boot, and for the first time since coming home, Liam felt no weight on his chest. "You're healing," Emma said softly between notes. Liam nodded. "We both are." The next morning brought a letter. It was tucked into the mailbox behind a stack of catalogs. No return address, just Liam's name in firm cursive. Inside a single page. It was from the widow of the soldier who had served with Liam and Shadow overseas. Her name was Linda Reyes, and she wrote with warmth and quiet grief. She'd heard about Shadow somehow. Word had spread. She thanked Liam for trying to bring him home again, and at the bottom of the page she wrote, "Some scars never vanish. But maybe they don't have to if they remind us that love stayed with us, even through the worst." Later that week, Sister Agnes invited Liam and Shadow back for a special event. A small community picnic just outside the orphanage. The children had been practicing songs. We'd be honored, she'd said, if Shadow would attend. He's quite the celebrity now. At the picnic, Liam watched Shadow walk calmly among the children, accepting pets and treats without hesitation. A young boy with autism named Julian, who rarely spoke, sat beside Shadow for over an hour, fingers curled into the dog's thick fur. No words, just peace. Emma joined the children with her violin, playing an upbeat tune that had the younger kids clapping along. Even Sam made an appearance, muttering about too many ants, but bringing homemade root beer all the same. Near the end of the day, a light rain began to fall, soft and warm like a blessing. The children squealed and danced. Liam stood with Emma under the shelter of an oak tree. She looked at him, eyes shining. "You brought him back," she whispered. Liam looked out at Shadow, who now stood on a small rise, ears perked, tail still. He wasn't guarding. He was present. And in his posture there was no fear, only calm. "No," Liam said, voice steady. "He brought me back." The days grew shorter in Sedona, shadows stretching longer across the canyon floors, the wind sharp with the scent of pine and distant rain. Autumn had arrived in full, dressing the sycamores in gold and copper, their leaves spinning to the ground like fragile memories. At Sam's garage, the air carried a chill that bit through Liam's sleeves as he tightened a bolt under the hood of a rusted pickup. Shadow lay nearby, his body curled beside the warmth of a space heater, eyes following Liam's every movement. Since the search for Duke and the picnic at the orphanage, a new kind of calm had settled in Shadow. He was alert, but no longer tense. Present, but no longer lost. Each morning he rose with Liam stretched and nosed the leash hanging by the door, as if to say, "We have work to do." That afternoon, Emma stopped by carrying a folded map and a thermos of mulled cider. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her braid draped over one shoulder. "Got a call from Sister Agnes," she said, sitting on the front stoop. "The orphanage has a leaky roof. The last storm tore through the eaves, and the forecast says another's coming tomorrow night. She asked if we could help move the kids somewhere safe, just for a night or two." Liam furrowed his brow. Where would they go? Emma unfolded the map and pointed to a small clearing just beyond Cathedral Trail. "There's an old ranger station there. Abandoned, but the structure's sound. Sister Agnes got permission from the county to use it. She said the kids would feel like they're on a camping trip. Make it an adventure." Liam nodded slowly. "We'll take them." Preparations began that evening. Sam provided an old trailer hitched to the back of his tow truck, grumbling about not babysitting, but helping anyway. Carla stopped by with extra blankets and dog food. Miguel, the quiet teenager who sketched Emma at the orphanage, offered to help fix the ranger station's broken stove. He was tall, awkward, with shaggy black hair and deep-set eyes that rarely met anyone's. But when Liam handed him a toolbox, Miguel took it without hesitation. Early the next morning, the group departed. The children were bundled in coats and wool hats, excited chatter rising like birdsong. Shadow walked beside Tyler the boy with the limp, who now insisted on being his assistant. Sister Agnes rode in the front seat with Emma, her hands clutching a tin of ginger cookies she'd baked at dawn. The hike to the ranger station was long, but manageable. The trail cut through thickets of manzanita and climbed gently past rocky ridges until the old wooden building came into view. It was simple 4 rooms, a fireplace, and a porch that sagged slightly in the middle, but it stood solid against the rising wind. Inside, Miguel and Liam worked quickly to patch leaks and clear debris. Emma gathered the younger children for a storytelling circle, her voice rising and falling like wind through trees. Shadow lay in the center of the room, ears flicking occasionally, body relaxed, as Miriam leaned against him with a book. As dusk approached, Liam stepped outside. The sky had darkened, heavy clouds pressing low over the mountains. A storm was coming fast. He scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing. Then he heard it far off, but distinct, the low roll of thunder. He turned and called to Emma. "Get them settled inside. This one's coming hard." The wind picked up. Leaves whipped through the clearing, the temperature dropping sharply. Liam moved quickly, securing the shutters, checking the roof patchwork one last time. Inside, the children huddled under blankets, wide-eyed, but quiet. Then the rain came. It fell in sheets, hammering the roof like drumbeats, loud and relentless. The wind howled through the trees, and for a moment the ranger station groaned beneath the weight of the storm. A branch cracked outside and thudded against the porch. Tyler whimpered. Emma wrapped an arm around him, whispering softly. Shadow stood and walked to the door, nose pressed to the crack body alert. Liam joined him. "We're okay, boy," he said, resting a hand on his back. "This won't break us," but then a cry pierced the air. "Noah." The boy had slipped away during the confusion. One of the older kids shouted he'd seen Noah head outside trying to retrieve a drawing that had flown off his clipboard. Liam's heart dropped. He grabbed his jacket, whistled once. Shadow bolted ahead. They ran into the storm. Rain blurred the trail, turning dirt to slick clay. Liam called Noah's name, voice raw against the wind. Shadow darted ahead, weaving between trees, nose low. Minutes passed, or maybe only seconds. Time folded in the rain. Then Shadow stopped. Beneath a leaning pine, huddled in a patch of wet leaves, was Noah, shivering, arms wrapped around his knees. Shadow approached slowly, nudged the boy's shoulder, then lay down beside him. Liam dropped to his knees, wrapping his coat around them both. "I was scared," Noah whispered. "I was too," Liam replied, holding him close. "But you're not alone." They returned, soaked, but safe. The children clapped. Emma's eyes glistened as she wrapped a dry blanket around Noah. Shadow shook himself off and flopped near the fire tongue, lolling, chest heaving. That night, as the storm softened into gentle rain, Liam sat on the porch with Sister Agnes, watching the trees sway. "He found him," she said. "He always finds who needs him," Liam replied. Inside, the children slept peacefully. Emma dozed near the hearth, her violin resting beside her. Shadow lay close, tail curled around his body, one ear still tilted toward the door. Outside, dawn crept in slowly. The storm passed. The land washed clean. The morning after the storm broke over Sedona like a blessing. The clouds, now tattered and thin, drifted quietly across the pale sky, revealing streaks of orange and pink that painted the eastern cliffs. The land was soaked, but still as if it too had taken a long breath and finally exhaled. The children woke slowly inside the ranger station, curled under quilts and flannel blankets, their laughter muted by the softness of new light. Liam stepped outside, coffee steaming in his mug, Shadow beside him. The dog's coat was damp but clean, his eyes scanning the horizon. The scent of wet pine and rain-drenched soil hung in the air. They stood there for a while, not speaking, simply watching the world dry and rise again. Inside, Emma stirred a pot of oatmeal over the fire. She hummed a tune under her breath, something light, warm. Her hair was still tousled from sleep, a single strand falling across her forehead. Miriam helped her slice fruit while Miguel repaired a loose hinge on the back door. For the first time, the teenager spoke more than a few words, explaining how he learned carpentry from his grandfather. Emma listened with gentle patience, asking about his sketches, his favorite subjects. Later that morning, Sister Agnes gathered everyone on the porch for a surprise announcement. She stood with her hands clasped, her smile small but radiant. The town council has agreed to restore this old station. With help from volunteers and the county, we'll turn it into a weekend retreat for the children, somewhere they can come when life inside walls becomes too heavy. And Liam, she added. Looking his way, they'd like you to be part of it. A guide, a mentor, if you're willing. Liam looked at Shadow, who met his gaze with quiet certainty. I'd be honored, Liam said. The next hours passed in a joyful blur. The children painted signs and hung paper lanterns made from jars and string. Emma led a music circle beneath the trees, while Carla and Sam arrived with more supplies. Food, sleeping mats, even a battered telescope that Sam swore still worked. By afternoon, the sky was clear and the land shimmered under the noonday sun. That's when Emma approached Liam with a quiet suggestion. Let's end this day where it all began. So just before sunset, they climbed Bell Rock. It wasn't an easy ascent, especially for the younger kids, but Liam and Emma guided them patiently, taking breaks along the way. Shadow led the path, ears perked, his body strong and sure. At one point, Tyler stumbled, and Shadow circled back, nuzzling his side until he stood again. Miriam sang softly as she walked, her voice echoing off the canyon walls like a bird finding home. When they reached the summit plateau, the view was breathtaking. Below them, Sedona stretched out in crimson and gold, the canyons glowing with the last fire of day. The wind was gentle here, high and clean. Emma set up her violin, Miguel his sketchbook, Sister Agnes her camera. Liam stood apart for a moment, looking at all of them, at Shadow sitting tall beside the children's tail, resting gently against Miriam's side. At Emma smiling toward the sky, eyes glistening in the golden light. And something in him shifted. He knelt beside Shadow and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small wooden box. Inside was a medallion, old worn, bearing the insignia of his unit. He had kept it through deployment's loss, silence. It had always reminded him of what he had survived. Today, it reminded him of what he had become. He looped the medallion through Shadow's collar. You carried me through it, Liam said. Now carry this. Shadow nudged his hand once, then turned his gaze toward the setting sun. Emma began to play. The music drifted over the cliffs, slow and wide, like the land itself. It wasn't a song of sorrow. It was a hymn to resilience, to memory, to love that had bent, but never broken. The children listened, some with eyes closed, others swaying gently to the rhythm. Even Sam, who had arrived late and stood near the trail with crossed arms, wiped something from his eye. As the final note faded, silence fell over Bell Rock, deep and sacred. Then from the quiet, a sound arose. Shadow lifted his head and howled. It was not the cry of pain or loss or fear. It was clear, long, and full. A voice returned to itself, a creature reconnected to the earth. The children listened in awe. Emma lowered her bow. Liam closed his eyes. Below them, the lights of Sedona flickered on one by one as dusk settled into evening. That night back at the ranger station, they celebrated with a small fire, stories told in circles, and mugs of hot chocolate passed between hands. Sister Agnes recited a poem about healing. Carla shared tales of stubborn dogs and the people who refused to give up on them. Miguel showed his drawings, one of Shadow standing over a canyon wings made of stone at his back. When the fire burned low and the stars blinked overhead, Emma took Liam's hand. You found your way home, she whispered. Liam shook his head gently, eyes on Shadow. We did. And in the stillness of that final night, the scars, visible and unseen, no longer held the weight they once had. They were not erased, but they had been made part of something larger, something whole, something healed. Sometimes healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in moments, in a shared glance, a steady hand, a quiet howl under a setting sun. Liam and Shadow taught us that even the deepest scars can fade when love is patient and trust is brave. In a world that often rushes past pain, they remind us to pause, listen, and believe in the slow return of light. And maybe you felt that too, in a dog who stayed by your side, in a person who waited in the quiet strength it took just to try again. In your life, who has helped you find your way back? Share this story with someone who needs to know they're not alone. Leave a comment below. Have you ever been guided by a love that refused to give up? And if stories like this remind you to believe again, don't forget to subscribe for more. Let's build a space where scars are honored. Second chances are real, and no one has to heal alone.